Avatar The Last Airbender star Ken Leung thought he was auditioning for a role in James Cameron's Avatar instead of that of Commander Zhao. For the record, he's killing it. He inhabits that role. He's doing well with the card he was dealt.
And can you really blame him? The Way of the Water just came out. Book 1 water.
The man thought he was going to be blue.
Well, he had enough attitude.
We will celebrate! We will create the glory!
I think he feels the capris of Commander Zhao very well, and he stuffs them. He stuffs the ends of his capris very fancifully to the top of his boots.
He's very smarmy.
Good evening to one and all. We have just watched all 8 episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender, not to be confused with James Cameron's Avatar: The Paint of the Blue People.
Nor to be confused with the animated Nickelodeon series that this live action is based on.
You think it's that different that we shouldn't be confused?
There is so much that is different, and there is so much that is on point, and I am excited to be here and talk about my favorite television show adapted into a live action Netflix series.
You sound excited.
I'm very excited.
So we just watched all of it. All of it. I have to admit, okay, so we watched episodes 1 through 4, Friday? So it was like the day after it came out?
Yep.
Right? Kailey was wise enough to hold off until we watched it together. That was sweet. Thank you.
You know, you still haven't seen all of the original series, but
that's true.
This has been our first opportunity to watch some new Avatar content, both for the first time together.
Mm-hmm. Howdy, y'all. I'm AJ.
I'm Kailey.
And you are listening to ATLA Shrugged, the Avatar: The Last Airbender podcast. And on this very special episode of ATLA Shrugged, we are giving our unfiltered opinions on the live action series. And we're doing that from a unique perspective.
So, Avatar: The Last Airbender. For those of you who listen, no, it's my favorite show of all time. I've seen every episode too many times.
And I haven't.
AJ's never seen it.
I have seen, we're up to episode 7 or 8 of the second season of the animated TV show. And I wanted to watch as much as I could before this came out. Kailey's like, oh, no. Everything that's covered in this live action is stuff you've already seen. Because what we knew going in is that it went up to the siege of the water temple, the one that is more populated than the other water temple.
The siege of the North at the North Pole?
Yes.
The Northern Water Tribe, you mean?
Yeah. But there was some stuff in this that I was introduced to. And the first time we watched it, we're talking about episode 5 of the live action. And the first time I watched it, as fate would have it, I fell asleep. So, and then I woke up, I was like, oh, what happened? She was like, oh, well, there was a bunch of spoilers there in the time that you fell asleep. I was like, okay, how bad can it be? How much can they have digressed from the source material? I fell asleep for an episode. We're still gravitating towards the Southern Water Temple. Northern Water Temple. We go north.
We go north. We're moving north. So the thing is, this episode of Atlas Shrugged is going to contain spoilers for the new Netflix live action series. AJ and I just binged it together. If you have not seen it, you probably don't want to listen to this episode yet. Mm-hmm. We're going to give our unfiltered views. So yes, pretty much up until episode 5. And then, yeah, really exclusively episode 5. I wasn't that worried about the things that would be spoiled for you. Until two creatures of the spirit world enter the narrative, both out of the book of which their story is contained and just placed.
By book, you mean series or season, right? Like
Season.
Book 1, book
yes,
2. Okay.
book 2, Earth. You should meet both of these creatures, but not yet. We're just going to throw them into the middle of season 1 on our way to the North Pole.
And so if you know and love Avatar, you can guess what we're going to say next, right? This is sort of a primer for how much liberty this series is taking. Because there's a lot of stuff, as I was watching, and especially rewatching that episode with the spirit folks that I had previously fallen asleep for. But I insisted. I was like, Kailey, no, I have to watch it all. We're going to give our unfiltered reactions. And that's fine. There's just a lot of... I don't know, Kailey. Take it away.
So, before I get into some of the other sour points I have, I just want to say a lot of what they did...
Cool.
Yeah, a lot of what they did is very cool. It is certainly a step up from M. Night Shyamalan's film, which I hate on so much in this podcast. It's certainly a good... at least a landing. We've climbed to a better product than that 2010 film. The sets were incredible. I loved the color scheme. I love the drama style filming. I love the cast in general. I feel like every single actor really got to know their character and embodied their character to the point that, like, Team Avatar plus Zuko, their facial expressions and all of their mannerisms, like, truly evoked the cartoon character they were basing it on. All of that was very cool. Great performances all the way around. I loved that they included the original score. There's so much good music in the Nickelodeon cartoon, and they included a lot of that music in the show. So many good things to say.
Uh-huh. Okay, so before we got on the mic here, I was like, Kailey, we just watched all of this. We're going to react to it now, right? We're going to do it for this podcast that we do together, right? And she's like, I don't know if I have enough nice things to say about it yet. I was like, Kailey, you're going to react to, even if it's not nice, you can still react. We are, I mean, you can insist, negative reactions to a piece of media on the internet, okay? Those are welcome on the internet. They thrive on the internet. They're prolific. Negative reactions are what the internet traffics in. Comments, criticisms, witticisms.
Listen, I have enough ego that I can pretend and daydream that maybe Gyuentio or Ken Leung or Daniel Day Kim or someone cool that's of the many, many cool people that are in this show might listen to our little podcast and be hurt by what I have to say about the show. But
She doesn't want to hurt anyone.
I want to start by saying the performances were absolutely incredible. Great job, bravo.
I thought it was cool. The CGI is cool. It's cool, you know?
But yeah, there were a few things that we both mentioned throughout the show. My response before we got on the microphones here was that I'm left with a feeling like at the end of Deathly Hallows Part 2, where all of the Harry Potter book lovers are waiting for that moment when Harry takes the Elder Wand back up to Dumbledore's office, pulls out his broken Holly and Phoenix Feather Wand, and repairs the damage that was done and goes on to live a happy, healthy life.
Because that's what happened in the book. You were kind of expecting to see it in the movie.
I certainly wasn't expecting Harry to snap the Elder Wand in half and throw it off a cliff, which is sort of how I feel about a few moments in this live action.
Okay.
cool thing to open with the flashback 100 years ago when the war began and the genocide of the Southern Air Temple occurred.
That was the bulk of the first episode, was a flashback. And it stands in contrast with what they did in the show, which is basically just like opening up, and it's a little more brooding. Like it's, you open up and there's a little boy in an iceberg, and like, why is he there? And to me, that creates intrigue.
Well, that's what we were talking about throughout. We would pause an episode and chat about a thing. But there is a lot of conflict with the show versus tell in this.
In this series, they like to tell you everything. They like to assume, A, that you've never seen the cartoon. So when you think about it, we might be coming at this from, we've sat here and talked about this cartoon for hundreds of hours at this point. We have thought and talked about Avatar more than most people have, and I haven't even seen it all. So maybe our perception is a little bit skewed on this when we see something that we don't expect, like a big, old, kind of grown-up flashback of a war atrocity when we were expecting curtains open and there's a goofy guy and he just got on Frozen and he's hungry. So that did set the tone for this live-action remake.
It certainly did. And you know what, when it opened with the flashback, it didn't start with the boy in the iceberg. It started with an airbender surrounded by other airbenders. At first I thought, okay, that's a really interesting choice. Most of this 8-episode live action, it starts by sort of combining 2 episodes at a time, and I thought in the first episode did an okay job of reweaving those timelines to tell the same parts of the story in a new way. I had some hope at that. Mm-hmm. What you end up losing a lot of, though, is you both have people who in large part are here to watch this show, obviously because they love the original cartoon.
Yeah.
And then you have a lot of people who are probably like, cool, it's a live action. Of course I'll watch that. Not everybody, like us in their 30s wants to like start watching a kid's cartoon right now. I get it.
Right, but in the time that Avatar, The Last Airbender has been on Netflix, it's been like one of their most highly rated IPs there. So if I was producing that, I would be like, oh, I need to be faithful enough for them, but also bring in a new generation. Like if I was producing this and somebody's in the room with me and they said, oh, this needs to be a shot-for-shot remake of Avatar The Last Airbender, a Nickelodeon show that had 3 ad breaks and was made 25, 26, 20, however many years ago.
Not quite 20 years ago.
I'd be like, no. We have to adapt this. And that's what they did, but they just made it really clear at the beginning, especially with the seemingly like their whole reinterpretation of the iconic opening monologue that opened every monologue of the cartoon long ago, the Four Nations. When the first time you hear like an intro like that and it's chopped up and it's rewritten, you think, why?
Which is that's another interesting thing. They use direct content, like the Secret Tunnel song didn't change. Mm-hmm. There are things that they take directly from the show. In the first episode of the cartoon,
I would have turned it off if they didn't sing Secret Tunnel.
I mean, I'm glad that they did that justice. But in the very first episode of the cartoon, in the intro is the only time Katara's voice opens with one extra line, which is my grandmother used to tell this story long ago the four nations lived together in harmony.
And it's like, I think even if you hadn't seen it, like I've seen it all. Granted, I've thought about Avatar more than most, like I'm saying. But even if you hadn't seen it, I think you would have put a lot of that together. I think there's a lot of instances of that. And that's what we're saying with the show versus tell. There is a lot of tell. There's a lot of monologuing. Some of it maybe is just because we know what they're talking about and what point they're trying to get across, because it is following the emotional beats of a lot of season 1. But it made me cringe a little bit.
Some of the style is like the genre, like it's the big sets and bright color and light and shadows, and feel the enormity of the space you're in. That's a big part of drama. I am a person who loves period pieces, so like half of what I watch that for is because of the beautiful furniture and the sets. Like everything is like a theater stage, and so that's what I loved about this. It was very immersive. It was very colorful. I think that the portrayals of each of the many, many, many settings that they went to pretty much were done justice. The aesthetics, the visual experience was a lot better than 2010 with just, ooh, it's a floating rock.
Yeah. It was. I mean, it was good to look at. It was cool. I can imagine that some of the, here, let's fill in the blanks for you, tendencies of the monologuing and the more cringe-inducing moments are, in a sense, financial considerations, because they do want this work to be translated into multiple countries and consumed by multiple countries. Is that why we're losing some of the subtlety? Who knows?
I think we talked about this throughout it too, but it was so much money and time and collaboration clearly put into every animation. The visual effects were incredible. The sound design was great. The actors' performances were great.
And it was studied. Like it's
yes.
not like it came, like the M. Night Shyamalan movie. It came out of almost a gross indifference for the source material.
But that show don't tell. It felt like the dialogue had not been edited to the extent that a final script should be edited.
We were sitting there pausing it and being like, that conversation would have done the same thing if it was like 3 lines long. We were sitting, it would take us out of it how explanatory a lot of the stuff was.
Yeah, and I made that comment because, as people who've been in our audience know, I write fiction. I have a degree in creative writing, and that's like one of the first things that you really workshop when you're in a fiction creative writing class is like, okay, are you showing, are you telling, are you being redundant? Because the redundancy in the dialogue, you don't have to go from, oh, who are you? You know who I am. I'm blah, 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 blah. You don't have to have everyone explain everything, and you certainly can use other tools to help your audience make the leap themselves.
There was a line in that episode we just rewatched, and it's fresh of mind for me, so I'm just going to say it, where they're in the spirit realm, and the fog is encapsulating everyone. And I think that they added this line in later, because then the fox's scene is over. Fog is washing over the screen, and then you hear like a voiceover of the fox just being like, by the way, the fog, it'll get you. And I was like, it's fog. It's getting them currently. Why did we need to know that? We knew that.
Okay, and the reason you think that was the fox is because
because it was the same voice as the fox, and that's what the subtitle said.
Right, but it doesn't. Do you remember who the fox is?
Yes.
Revealed to be?
Yes. Ice Queen.
Yes, Yue. Princess Yue.
Yue.
And that, okay, but that highlights one major issue I have with the character development. It both relies on an archetypal understanding that comes from being a longtime watcher of the Nickelodeon show, because I think Zuko was perfect because he was Zuko, the Zuko I know.
Yeah.
And Azula was great too. But Azula had 2 girls with her, And if I were watching this rendition of Avatar: The Last Airbender for the first time, there are many characters whose names I don't know, and I don't know why they're there.
Yeah. They just like pop up.
May and Ty Lee are there.
And it's kind of okay. And I don't know if this is a criticism of my media literacy. I don't know. What do I know? I just make TV. I don't know if this is a question of my media literacy. It made me feel the same way that I sometimes often do when I'm watching like a Marvel movie. I'm like, okay, who is that? Why do I care? You know?
Right.
Like somebody like it appears on screen and it's like, did you guys need a hand with this? And sometimes I'll be sitting in a theater and hear everybody cheer like, woo! I was like, oh, well, I didn't know I was supposed to know who that is. But it's a different feeling, like you're saying, the kind of detachment from like this character, that character, when they don't play a role. And this Avatar: The Last Airbender thing, this live action adaptation, it's coming at it from the point of view is this is a fine starting point for all of this. And then like you just see like random people in the background. You're like, oh, what would somebody who knew nothing about Avatar think about all that? And so I think you're thinking about the right thing. And I think we're kind of putting our finger on the first impression of this adaptation.
Yeah. It
was good to look at. I mean, and it was good. There were pacing issues, and I think a lot of that has to do with editing. I think maybe there was a director or a writer in the editor's room, and they had written all these lines, and they had spent an hour or two maybe on making sure that their talent got the vibe of one line across, and then when it came time to actually look at this thing as a whole in the editing room, they're seeing how much unnecessary dialogue they shot. And any other film set would just be like, oh, well, if it's not serving a purpose, then we'll just cut it. But if you have a director or a writer in the editing room, it can be a double-edged sword like that. They could be like, no, we worked so hard on getting that take. We got to leave it in. We worked so hard, say, on doing this CGI.
Mm-hmm.
This visually arresting thing. We got to leave it in because that costed money.
That did cost some big money. And that to me is it. We know that the writers of the original series distanced themselves. They distanced themselves from this project because of the restrictions they felt Netflix, the company, was putting on them creatively. They could not take it in the direction that they envisioned.
Mm-hmm.
And so they distanced themselves. And there is a planned animated new Avatar, Team Avatar that we know, film coming in 2025 from Paramount. So they went in a different direction. I think that the people involved with the Netflix project still clearly cared about the story they had, but
the core writing duo was credited on most of those ending credits there. So how does that fit in?
I mean, I don't know all.
We don't know. Like maybe they. So we know that they abandoned the project. Is that true? No, hold on. We're gonna look that up. So they were involved for 2 years. That's why we see them all over the end credits. But then they departed the thing.
Over creative differences.
Are those creative differences the things that we're talking about right now? Who's to say?
What I do see is that this is an 8-episode series jam-packed with planning and talent and care. But it's like they reached in with double-fisted and tried to hold all of the gumballs. And you can't hold all the gumballs.
That's a great analogy, babe.
Thank you. I just came up with it.
Nice.
But that's it. It's like how much money? I'm just wondering. Because I think Appa and Momo probably had a collective 10 to 15 minutes on screen.
Mm-hmm.
We know that Appa and Momo were with them everywhere all the time, and Appa is very tactile in book 1.
I've never seen Appa smile in the live action. He doesn't smile. He's like their car.
Yeah.
He's more than a car.
They park him and you don't see him out of sight, out of mind.
Appa.
Crap, do you remember where we parked?
No. Let's see. We came in on home and pharmacy side. And now we're at the grocery side. Hold on. 6'3", carry the 2. Oh, I see our car.
Great.
So, thoughts? Any final thoughts? It feels weird to like get on the mic and not be trying to get through something sequentially in our heads, because that's what we're usually doing, like following an outline and stuff. But we literally, we just finished. I went back and rewatched like the part that I had missed due to my slumber, and then we just hopped on the mic and yeah, that's what we think. There's some really good acting.
There's some really good acting, and I guess my final thought here would be that for the lead up, because I have been anticipating this, it's one of the fantasies I care most about in the world, and to see it in live action, whether good or bad, is a wonderful experience.
It's awesome, and it's awesome to see, even if it's not exactly what we were expecting, it's awesome to see perhaps a whole new audience get introduced to this world, its many awesome, interesting facets, its take on a sort of hypothetical geopolitics is still mostly preserved. I would have been really sad watching this if they would have just said Fire Nation bad. Why? Doesn't matter. but they do kind of flesh that stuff out. They didn't just like pull a Star Wars and say like, oh, they're bad because they talk like bad guys. We get some of that. So I'm happy with it. Is it the best live action Avatar that could have possibly been? Honestly, who knows?
There's no blue people. And I guess
there are no blue people, and Ken must have been so upset.
I guess I would just leave it with, it's a wonderful experience, especially if you love Avatar. There's so much visually, and that you should see it. You should watch it if you love Avatar: The Last Airbender. Like how season 8 of Game of Thrones strayed because there was not source material to draw from, and thus ruined the ending for a lot of very dedicated fans. It's this series I felt towed some lines, and it is my opinion that if an adaptation is forced to divert away from the source material for any reason, it requires tenfold due diligence to write effectively, to communicate the things that the original series made people fall in love with in the first place. And some of that, I feel like, I hope they take some viewer feedback, and in season 2 it'll be better.
Like when Aang is having revelations. Aang loves to have revelations by himself in the live action adaptation, and I thought one of the biggest strengths of the cartoon so far was that when Aang has a revelation, somebody who has an external view of what he's going through kind of conks him on the head with a staff and is like, hey, Aang, get it together. And in so doing, we get an expansion of the relationship between Aang and whoever is conking him on the head at that time. And so the whole Aang, like, oh, the answer just came to me kind of tendency in this storytelling. It doesn't work for me.
Also, just Roku doesn't work for me. Not the actor, great performance, good comic relief.
I liked it.
It was a nice scene. That scene was very never-ending story. Like the light.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I would say fantastic, A+, 100% job on all of the cast performances. Incredible work.
You could tell, you know, you could tell the actor who played Sokka,
Ian,
was hell-bent on being the best Sokka he could be. We could tell that the actors who played Katara, Kyo, hell-bent on being the best Sokka she could be. We could tell that Aang, literally, he's got a show. It came out probably before he was born. There is a live-action adaptation, but don't consult that. All you have to do is look at this cartoon. He did a good job.
and Iroh likes tea.
And Iroh likes tea. Iroh likes tea quite a bit. If Iroh had said something about tea the first time we saw him, I would have jumped up in my chair and cheered. And so as I waited for him to say something about tea, which he did. He eventually did. I cheered. And the world cheered with me.
We will celebrate!
So we watched it all. We're going to keep talking about the animated show, of course. Can't wait for that. I don't know. Is there anything else to say?
All there is to say is I have a lot of opinions. I'm sure
Well, we just learned about it.
you'll have lots of opinions, and I look forward to hearing more of them.
Yeah, and if you have an opinion that you want to use to like counter something we said, or if something that we said makes you think about how you feel about the show, let us know. You can get through to us on our socials, and we'll write back to you. Probably like quicker than you would expect, like annoyingly quick.
But yeah, that's true.
And then we'll
Annoyingly
keep
quick.
sending emojis until you read our reply. We will keep sending emojis.
You'll know it's me because comedy emoji.
She loves a comedy emoji. It's how she shows she cares.
It's Sozins.
Until we get back to the cartoon, I'm AJ.
I'm Kailey.
And that was our live, unfiltered, raw reaction to the Avatar The Last Airbender live action series. And who knows, we might give it the Atlas Shrugged treatment at some point. Maybe if we're waiting for new content to come. We've already done season 3. And maybe we'll do our deep dive into that live action thing.
I think he's actually getting into this.
I'm not. Show's for babies. Bye, guys.